Can we do the cage fight thing? I mean, like, they're two big guys. This would be very
I mean,
interesting.
we can
Actually, that'd
say
be pretty cool. Yeah,
we can
just get
play
that
the
live
tension
stream.
if we
Yeah.
want to play the tension.
I
We
mean,
can,
maybe just an arm wrestling match. I realize it's virtual. We'll have to figure out like a location.
but I think I would have to play up the tension because it's to me it's not there because so much of what I'm doing is tech and humans in tech.
All right. Are you guys ready to go?
Let's do it.
Sure.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heynen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the latest episode of AI for Advisors with myself, Mark Heynen, and James Cantwell. James, how you doing?
Doing great as always, Mark. Excited for this week. We got some great follow-ups with Jason Quinn from Advisor360 and my good friend, Dr. Joshua Wilson from Neubefi. So excited to dig into a few topics today.
Yeah, this is going to be cool. So, I think what's exciting about this show is we really have, two slightly different perspectives on success for advisors. Dr. Joshua and I actually spoke a little bit at a previous conference about Neubefi and what he's up to. A neurobehavioral growth firm for RIAs and fintechs, which helps firms become magnetically marketable in an AI flooded industry. And so I think, Joshua, I think maybe we can start with having you introduce yourself, and then Jason will pivot to you and have you talk through Advisor360, where you're the CFO and COO and actually helping launch some exciting new products. Yeah. So Joshua, why don't you take it away? Give us a bit of your background and where you're coming from.
Sure. Well, I'm coming from a farm in rural Alabama, as we established before originally,
Awesome.
but I did a degree in religious studies and learned a year after I got out of college and I was entering the financial services industry with nothing but a religious studies degree and 1 year working for a church, that about all I had to offer was the ability to pray for your money as a financial advisor. And so I began to do everything that the industry tells you to do, learn all the pitches, learn all the funds, get all the technical details. I created my war book, every chart, every figure, and I began to grind it out. And eventually it sucked for a few years and then it started to work, and grinded it out as an advisor, worked my way through TD Ameritrade's advisor, branch manager, led the national sales training program, got into overcoming objections and sales and all that stuff. And then finally went the RIA route. And so I had built everything on left-brained. Everything was intelligence and information and being smarter than and having more information than. And so I was always competing on this better loop. And then I had a meeting where some prospects came in one day and they sat down and they said, "Hey, we Googled you and we found that graduation speech that you gave at Brown." And they just started talking to me about it. 25 minutes later, she looks at him, he looks at her, and he says, "Well, I guess we want to work with you. Just had a few questions." And that blew me away. Okay, I want more of this, because everything I was doing was grinding it out. So I began to really throw myself at understanding, hey, there's a lot more to this than just overcoming objections and having the information and being smart, that sort of thing. And when I learned that about 95% of the proportion of how people make decisions is on a subconscious, pre-conscious basis. And when I began to look at behavioral finance, which is wonderful, I fell in love with behavioral finance, but the problem with it is it was always talking to clients and always assumed that I had people that were already working with me. And so what I got interested in is what happens before people have made a decision? What happens when people are looking to, who do I trust? Who do I even pay attention to? And so where my work has gone after I built a firm and sold it, did another turnaround at another firm and so on and several other things, I decided to go back to school for a PhD in behavioral finance where I could learn getting more into creating my frameworks for helping people to identify this signal layer. Because traditional marketing is all about how do you get your message out there. It's a strategy for tactics. But what we're seeing is more and more people are able to get tactics out quickly. Our industry is actually pretty new to marketing. When I first got into it, no one was marketing. Everything was relationships and referrals, what I call R&R. But now people are starting to market. They want to scale. So marketing is becoming mainstream. But here's the thing is when everybody's repeating the same tactics, and now with AI, everybody can get more tactics, more information, the brain adapts. And what happens is now the brain adapts to more information. Just like when you go from a quiet room to a loud room, and all of a sudden you can't hear anything unless I focus in and say, I'm going to look at Mark and pay attention to Mark and choose to focus on Mark. Otherwise, I can't hear anything. And that's what's happening to consumers is artificial intelligence, technology. It's allowing things to get more information from more people all at the same time, which means information comes up, the brain adjusts, and now what used to be enough was tactics is not enough because we don't have that signal layer that gives people the ability to say a gut level, this is my guy, before they ever even have a conversation.
So Joshua, is that what Neubefi does? I mean, you basically help firms stand out from the noise?
Exactly. People have tactics. Oftentimes firms we built a business on relationships and referrals. Now we actually want marketing to work. We've tried marketing and we don't get the returns. We actually realize we're not differentiated. And then that has begun to work into WealthTechs as well. So now I work with some VC firms, work with WealthTech firms, actually launching something next month with a couple of VC partners to work specifically with WealthTechs because my WealthTech business has never went out to talk to WealthTechs, but that has become a big part of my business of helping WealthTechs to work on their positioning, their go-to-market, how they're speaking to the market, and that sort of thing. So, the VCs handle the capital side. I'm really handling more of the messaging and the ecosystem side of how people actually make decisions.
Do you want to tell us what that platform is or that venture?
Yeah. So, do you know Marshall Smith from First Rate Ventures? Yeah. So Marshall's a First Rate. He's involved with Founders Club, Founders Arena, and a few other things. And basically, Marshall and I just kept running into each other with working with the same firms, working with the same problems, and we really realized we were solving the same problems, but coming at them in very different ways. And then when we began to work together on some issues, it just became very clear that we were talking about the same problems. And now the moat has really disappeared. We've actually got a white paper coming out next week. It'll be out by the time this comes out. Of the moat is full. Build is not your moat. Product is not your moat. Your features and your benefits is not your moat. Your moat is adoptability. So a lot of founders really aren't ready for the market that they're coming into, and they're not ready to really win that adoption battle. So what we're putting together basically is WealthTech Founders Lab. Basically, the place you go as a WealthTech founder to get your labs done. You're going to get a diagnosis of your marketing, your positioning, your messaging, how you're going to appear to people who are investing in the space, and how you're going to present to the market itself. So you're getting both the behavioral, psychological, sales buyer side from me, and also that capital side from Marshall.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. I love the idea of go in and get your labs done, like figure out what's what before you can figure out what to do next.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, I love that. So Jason, let's pivot over to you. You came from DraftKings IPO to Data Robot. You're now running operations at Advisor360, and you're also CFO, I understand. And I understand you just launched what you're calling the industry's first AI-native wealth operating system. So would love for you to just give a little more context and background and talk about what that actually means for advisors day to day, especially in light of what Joshua just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, sounds like Advisor360 should do some business with Joshua. Pretty incredible opportunity and company. Congratulations on that venture.
Hey, we'd love to work together. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're making deals right now, right on the show.
On the air.
I'm ready to sponsor my Advisor360.
I love it. So, I mean, my background's taking advantage of industry and technology changes. So whether that's internet, mobile first was sort of gaming with DraftKings. AI was sort of coming on market, was applied AI, was Data Robot. They sort of had a competitor named Databricks. Databricks was definitely the category winner, I think, at this point. And then there's a new category with ChatGPT, Anthropic, and others. What I saw was a part of like the financial service sector was a little bit lagging in technology adoption to some degree, based on particularly like the B2C side or some of the more forward thinking industries that they were adopting technology pretty quickly. And when you think about financial advice, where it was going and where it continues to push, is that bringing a holistic story together for a family that's dealing with kids, aging parents, and continues to accumulate investable assets. How do they work with an advisor? Younger advisors aren't joining the industry as quickly. What's going on? And so the thought process was how I like to solve missions. So Advisor360 sort of had this unique combination of a unified data fabric as well as what they call a unified workflow. So what they tried to do, the first chapter was, I want to solve the workflow and data problem in the market. I want to give a holistic application software to the advisor so they could sort of run their business inside of one sort of application and bolt on a bunch of other apps that maybe help them differentiate or specialize in their work. What saw with that was like, it's a really great setup to move to the next phase of technology, which is AI. What does AI really need cleanly is if you have a good contextualization of data and has a nice workflow to be able to execute on, it sort of can start to do the work on behalf, some of the more administrative work on the behalf of advisors. So advisors could really spend a lot of their time and preservation of relationship and deeper understanding, which AI can't do. It just makes them more human. It makes the advisors spend more time on the human side and less time on the operation and administrative side. So what the company did, it took a couple of years, is it just said, okay, well, how do I take what's the new wave of technology that needs to sort of take advantage of this technology trend? And so what we determined was, and where we want to get to is this future of a family, an advisor, and an automated financial platform in a room, having a discussion with the advisor, but sort of bringing conversational AI, absorbing that, being able to execute on behalf of the family or the advisor, depending on its directives that was given in the room. So that future isn't here yet. But the first piece of being able to pull off that future is to develop an operating system that can actually handle artificial intelligence pretty well. And so that's what we launched. And then what's on top of that is a data model that's unified and has householding or family logic. So basically you understand through algorithms who's in your family, who's in your next generation, who's in your prior generation. So it can kind of take different cuts of your world so you can better prepare your estate planning or your tax harvesting or the like.
So,
and that, yeah.
Oh, Jason, I was just going to ask, like, I actually just wrote an article, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and it mentioned Advisor360 in it because, you're one of the existing, kind of quote unquote, like legacy CRMs, but it looks like you're doing something far more dramatic than what some of the other legacy CRMs are doing when it comes to AI. So what kind of led to that decision internally? Because it sounds like you've been working on this for a couple of years. What led to that decision internally that you're not going to just bolt on or partner with something, but really kind of re-architect? And let me know if I'm exaggerating anything, but that's kind of my understanding is.
Yeah. I mean, so coming from different industries and technology waves, and then a lot of the guys that we've hired and great women come from AWS or other startup portions of the industries. And one of our beliefs is, what does software do first is usually eats other software. And so, what we did was we went out and said, well, technology trend that was happening was what we purchased was Parrot, which is an AI note-taking capability. And sort of the thought process was, okay, well, what's some of the first applications that may or may not get eaten, especially in the advisor mediated marketplace? It's advisors love to purchase CRMs. They're starting to purchase AI note-taking capabilities. And a couple companies have really took off much faster than I think we all thought from an AI capability. And then that's starting to replace, I think, a portion of what the CRM does today. So you have two choices. You could do the vibe code, a light version of CRM. I think we were kind of joking about that earlier. But the density of the enterprise capability of the CRM is pretty hardened. There's a nice system of record underneath there. But certainly what we did was bring the technology in, integrated it on top of an application layer, linked to our data layer. And what we can now do is you can let the AI listen to the conversation. It can then load into the CRM. And then you can use Gen AI capabilities, which is reminding yourself of what the conversation was and asking it and prompting it. Or you can, which we gave it agency. So at this point, we can capture a conversation and say, please execute this workflow. In other words, load your financial plan, update it based on this last conversation. And it can start do that within the platform of Advisor360. So that was the thought process. And, I think there's probably a short period of time where application software continues to be relevant, but with agency and the ability of conversation and AI, like a Gronk would be in Tesla or things of that nature, I'm not so certain that application layer is going to be as relevant on a go-forward basis.
Do you guys even consider yourselves a CRM at this point, or have you just expanded
We
beyond
can,
that? That's just a feature.
yeah, we consider ourselves basically a financial platform. So we look at three things as a real component of like holistic financial, and you can go much broader than this, but we sort of are starting in wealth. So there's all these components of wealth that you need to bring together to understand net worth. Insurance is also pretty important. So we bring that together. And the last part is banking. Now we have capabilities of banking, but you need those three to get to most of people's financial life to be able to then start to really, be good at advising. So that's why I call Advisor360, bringing those three worlds together. So we look at ourselves as a platform, and there's a CRM application there that we've created, which is kind of like your vanilla version of, if you go to the grocery store, you buy the brand of the grocery store versus the sort of like, nuanced other aspects. And we're not agnostic to other applications like you see Wealthbox or Redtail. We do integrations with them. So what we're trying to do is have advisors have complete independence. They can be on a firm like an RIA, or they can be part of a broker dealer. We don't really have banks, but they can be within banks. But we want to give them their opportunity. Like you have a Netflix, you just purchase a subscription, you belong to a platform. We'll bring in applications, whether it's ours or others. You unify the data, and we try to unify the workflow. And so it just makes the client and the advisor have an easier time working together.
I feel like it's getting more and more challenging. I mean, like we all know the Kitz's map, and I feel like it's getting more and more challenging to easily describe what most of these platforms do or put them in a category, because they each just have kind of a nuance. And like when you're talking about this unified data layer and things like that, now you just and integrating with these other applications, now you're just kind of across the board.
Yeah.
And that's
totally
got to
agree.
be, and this might be really interesting for Josh to chime in as well. That's really interesting, just like a marketing challenge. Like, how do you deal with describing something when there's so much complexity? It can do so much.
It's a very I spent the last couple of days in a war room with marketing to work on this, and so one of the so it's a big challenge. And so like the thought process is we're like going outcome first. Like what do you really want? And essentially, you want to be able to run your practice without going in and out of many different applications. You want your client to sort of go to one place where they can text and communicate, but also see their financial holistic picture. And that's really our North Star. And it's hard to get there though, because most advisors, the firms are solving like a point problem at a time. And so they
Yes.
tend to like to go after the Kitch's chart, which is an incredible a bunch of applications. But what we see is that as they develop, they kind of tap out at a certain AR, and then they have to reinvest in a platform layer. They have to then fix the data problem. They have to do a bunch of integrations so they can have a more holistic, I think, sort of run at the mill versus, try to just get to a small point solution. So what we're sort of inviting is the innovation of the industry to continue. You can use our applications, or you can actually build, if you want to plug in your application into our sort of platform layer, you can probably get further. And for example, we're going to be launching a financial planning tool that's a third party tool we embedded quite nicely. They're going to focus on financial planning. They're going to go really after that. And they're very excited that they don't have to work on the infrastructure layer at this point.
It's interesting. I wonder if the Kitz's map is even relevant anymore, right? I mean, it feels like if it's a map, there's like tectonic shifts happening and continents are colliding with each other, right? And ultimately, the map is predicated on the idea that like you have to get different point solutions because there's the incremental cost of adding features to a SaaS application is relatively high, when actually right now it's relatively low. I mean, I don't want to diminish the difficulty of building a CRM. Like you're saying, Jason, there's a really important system of record there, and it's going to be a while until people can completely build brand new CRMs. At the same time, I would say everyone's adding features via integrations or elsewhere to, just like you said just now, Jason. So I do think that like ultimately, if you zoom out a little bit, we're getting to the point where every advisor is going to have access to, tools that makes them extremely informed and hopefully very efficient. But then it still gets to this marketing problem, right? So how do tools differentiate themselves if they're all doing similar things? And then if every advisor is effectively, using all-in-one tools or a combination of tools that makes them equally informed, then how do they differentiate themselves? And I guess, yeah, I mean, Joshua, I would love to go back to you. How does differentiation work if we're all just like all using the same AI tools and everyone has basically sounds exactly the same? And maybe everyone gives a follow-up email within 5 minutes of the meeting ending and they all sound pretty much the same. Like, how do you differentiate at that point, right?
All of these things that were differentiators, I keep saying the floor is rising.
Right.
Minimum expectations are getting easier to reach. And that's wonderful because everything that you're talking about used to cause friction. And that's why people didn't do it. We understand that those things work, but who does it? It's friction. You got to pay for it, right? And now as the cost of those things goes down, you get more of them, and now everyone does it. Okay. So you can be first to market. And so the people that I believe who's going to be ahead is the people that keep up with technology, because technology keeps you it keeps you operational. It also allows you, by reducing this friction, as Jason was talking about, essentially, allows you to reallocate that to other things. And I'll actually put this in the context of of Advisor360. You've got really a couple of things at work. You've got attention and you've got identity. That's what I heard in what he was saying. Attention is basically, okay, people are choosing a time when they give attention and they're seeking to give a very specific type of attention. People are not trying to give broad attention. They're trying to give specific attention because they've got a very specific need. And that's why we go to the Kitsis map, right? Because we're looking for a feature to solve a specific problem. So by the time that we're finding an all-in-one solution, it can feel like sprawl because it can do everything. So a platform in that situation is, well, okay, we've got to speak to identity to attention sooner than point solution. Because if you can speak to attention sooner than point solution, then you get people in your ecosystem, you get people in what I call your friend group. Okay, so for example, I am in a group of 5 people and somebody mentions football. Well, I'm into football. So we start talking about football and now we're in a conversation and now I start learning other things. Why? Because of the osmosis of being around this person. So oftentimes what happens is people go searching for an individual solution. I want a conversation about football, but they meet someone who's like, hey, let me tell you everything about what I've got. So the better way to actually do it is get people into attention about things they're interested in. And then you begin to let them learn casually about things that they weren't interested in yet, but now it starts piquing their interest about these other things. So it's oftentimes we think about marketing our product and marketing our feature, marketing our benefit. A lot of times with platforms that are sprawl, which means that people see blur, they come in for a point solution, they see the whole thing and it's blur. Okay, we need to focus on getting their attention and then letting them be in the ecosystem. This is why communities are so impactful. Doesn't mean you have to form a community, but that's one way that we execute this. Is you get people into a conversation because they're interested, whether that's any number of things into the conversation. Then they learn about the other things. The other thing that comes up is identity. What does it say about me? What does it say about who I'm trying to become that we're working with this? Who are we speaking to? Not just what are we selling, but what does it say about me that I chose this advisor? What does it say about me that I chose this platform? How are we hitting people in an identity issue? So for example, now I'm going to take this from a tech firm and I'll take it into a financial advisor. Everybody's selling planning and holistic and retirement and all these things. Okay. But here's the thing. Everyone is magnetic to someone. Now we're talking about individual levels and we pull that as an institutional brand as well. But we end up mistaking our magnetism for our professionalism. We end up taking all of these different things from different people. We listen to a bunch of podcasts, we read a bunch of books, we take a bunch of best practices that we heard in a seminar or at a conference, and we say, I'm going to take a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And I like this is an illustration I love to give. Were any of you in Pizza Hut's Book It Club?
No,
Remember,
I don't know what that is.
You'd read a book.
No, but now I'm hungry for pizza.
You'd get a sticker, and you fill up your button with stickers, and they give you a free personal pan pizza and a big red cup. And you take that cup, you and your 10-year-old friends, and you would go and you would get Dr. Pepper and Pepsi and Mountain Dew and Mr. Pibb all in the same cup.
Oh,
yeah, and you called it a suicide or a tornado, depending on where you were from. And it tasted like everything, and it tasted like nothing, but you didn't care because you were 10. And that's the way that most firms do their brand design, their marketing. They take a little bit of everything, put in a lot of professionalism, and they tell me what their brand is. You don't get to choose your brand. You can only influence your brand. Your brand is the associations that people make with you. So we're looking for, hey, what are the things that are most, so I do deep behavioral discovery when I'm working with an individual firm. It's a little different with a technology firm, but with individuals, I do deep behavioral bottom-up discovery to understand what makes them magnetic and to whom. So instead of us just choosing, I want to talk to these people, who is naturally going to be most magnetic to, what role do I play in their life, and what language do I use to speak to them? Because here's the thing, most all the training that we get is all about how to work with your clients and how to manage these things. We're focusing on how do you get attention, get people into the conversation to choose you at a gut level. So when they're coming into the conversation, it's a confirmation, not an interview.
Interesting. Joshua, have you found working with individual advisors that you've influenced them to actually change who they work with, not just their messaging, but the way you just described it, a lot of advisors are like, well, I'll work with small business owners, or we work with this, and they kind of choose a niche. And it sounds like you're almost saying you don't really get to choose your niche. Like, it chooses you. And you just need to identify it.
To a certain extent. So I had a client that said this to me a couple weeks ago, and she's fantastic. And she told me, she said, I was looking back at some of the stuff I did about 8 years ago. And it was this program, it was about discover your niche and that sort of thing. And it was great, really changed my business. And now I went back and looked at it with the things I'm doing with you, and it just seems like elementary school. And I'm like, oh, hold on. That was great for you. You said it was great for when it was, but now we're looking at the bigger picture. So it's not just about, as you said, there's not just choosing your niche. Who am I trying to get to? But what is it about me that is magnetic? What do I need to highlight? And get that in the front. Oftentimes I'll sit down and I'm talking to an advisor, and 45 minutes into the conversation, I'm like, wow, this guy's really marketable. It took me 45 minutes to get there. Now, if he's building his business from referrals and relationships, then that's okay, because he's got a slow burn bottom up. But if we got to get attention from the top down, we got to find those things that are sparks. Who is it going to be a spark for? So part of it is nature. We got to identify those things. And then part of it is the nurture of, okay, when we're speaking to those crowds, what is our message? What role do we play in it? How are we can be emotionally resonant to this crowd? So often what I find is people kind of had a little bit of an inkling of the things that the people that they bonded with. But here's the thing, they've been taking ridiculous, 1950s advice for the last 75 years of just ask your clients and ask them why they hired you. People don't know. That's the craziest advice in the world. No, they're going to rationalize. They're going to think, I hired you 6 months ago. You're a CFP and you seem qualified. And no, that's not it. But they're going to rationalize it. So we're actually doing discovery of finding out, hey, who should you be talking to? What is it about you that's magnetic to whom? And so what I found is it really gives people the confidence to really lean in and understand, hey, I am different. I didn't realize I was different. I kept saying I was different, but deep down I knew that I was saying the same things that everybody else was saying.
Yeah.
But we're actually developing an actual point of view where when a topic comes up, I know a structure of how I turn this into my enemy, the problems that I solve. How do I convert attention into intrigue. And
Yeah,
everybody
can you give
talks
us
about
examples?
authenticity.
Actually, like, I'm curious of examples for an advisor and maybe for a wealth tech of those, magnetic components that really then clarify things. I would love to just understand that at a deeper level.
The magnetic things. Okay, so this can be something. So there's multiple elements of it. So there's story arc. Okay, so that's everybody says tell stories, and there's something to telling stories. But what's your story? Not just when did you enter the industry? I've been doing this 20 years, and we really like people think that their story is something very different. No, it is what qualifies you. Your story is what qualifies you to be the person, not just tell stories or where did you come from, and make sure you drip in your college and things that are personal about you. Yes, that's connecting with people 101. There's also psychological things. So for example, one of my last client call, I got off the phone with her 30 minutes ago. In discovering things with her, we have discovered that the way that she interacts with the world, she has two kind of main energies that are coming across. And one of those energies, part of what I do is archetype. She has a strong sage archetype and a strong caretaker archetype. The way her caretaker archetype is coming through her language is hurting her. And so we're workshopping, creating her message, because everything she is just natural. But there's elements of her that are very successful, elements aren't. So I take that, I cross-reference that with her strengths, with her behavioral profile, and also with her personal story. So I do this discovery of personal story to say, okay, hey, this is a very specific type of person, broadly and extremely narrowly, people that are going through a specific type of transition in life that your story arc makes you extremely qualified. Everything you don't have to tell your story. You are the story. You qualify it. Okay. And so then we take these into, okay, here's how the way you naturally communicate is coming out. This is the role that you play. This is the thing we need to kind of push down a little bit. This is the thing we need to highlight. These are the words we need to use early. And so we find these things that are both individual to her natural story, to the way that she hits the market. That's what I call the pressure layer. And that's where the archetype studies come in. That's where the resonance studies comes in. And then we take that and we look at, okay, who is the audience out there? How do we look at them? Do we look at the quality of the niche? Is this something I even have access to? Because you don't have access to it, doesn't really matter how well. Do they have money, right? So there's just the basics of it. And then there's the basically taking of your strengths, your personality, your story arc, messaging, how we can get those messages in front of people. And then it comes into eventually the tactics. But first, it's about designing that signal. What is a signal that has a strong pull, and to whom? And do those people have money? And we can do that.
Yeah. If I were to try to turn out the contrast, do I hear that you're basically saying people should first figure out what makes them different and what makes them unique before they start investing heavily in technology to just catch up and be the same as everyone else?
I don't know if I would say that that's the order. I think that you've got to be, I think that technology doesn't solve all your problems.
Okay.
I would say that instead that the way I would say it is that AI and technology absolutely helps. It helps advisors move faster, reduce administrative lag, all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't make them distinct. So if you're always going to be trying to keep up, and we have to accept that. That's great and it's wonderful. And like the great thing about Advisor360 is they're removing so much friction, all these things between these things that gives you room for something else. But as they do this and other firms chase them in doing this, the opportunity is still there. Okay, now we can actually invest in these other things but we've invested so much in technology. It's not the enemy. The point is that the technology has advanced far faster than our systems for developing human excellence. So now the market has the tools, the content, the automation, but it still struggles with the same growth problem, which is all about trust, attention, and differentiation. And that's the layer I'm studying.
So, Jason, I want to give you a chance to chime in here. So, being more of the technology representative on the call, not necessarily specific to Advisor360, but you're welcome to go there. How do you see where we are with technology, where we are with AI, potentially what you're doing with Advisor360, helping advisors to get the attention of their clients or deepen those relationships? How does the technology become an enabler?
I think the way we think about it is that so the software era in the last 30 years helped like augment some of the work to get done. And I think as we're seeing this next wave of technology, it's hopefully automates a lot of the work to get done. I think the differentiation on the advisor side, even the firm side, is going to be about like what work actually should get done and what order should get done. And I like what Joshua was saying. Like I think the special part about an advisor is you're sort of pulling out some of the potential deepest fears or conversations that the client wants to have and likely didn't even have with their family or their spouse. And so you're kind of really trying to pull that out into a conversation. And then by pulling that out, you're trying to then understand like, well, what would you like to do with that? What would you do with that risk, or what would you do with that life circumstance, and how do you want to take care of it? And what's your risk profile? What's your opportunity profile that you'd like to do? And then the advisor will, given its expertise, will be able to direct the software now to actually execute it. They'll just execute faster. But I think like what I see as exciting is that I think we're going to have less advisors doing more of the administrative work, and they're going to have to get really good at the human side of being a better understanding of what that person is really trying to achieve in their financial life. And it's not really financial life, right? It's really like potentially they want to take some time off and they want to understand, am I going to be off my path? Or could I do that? Maybe they want to have a child and they would like to spend more time with that child over the early stage of life versus most of people having children are in usually the heart of building their careers at the same time with their young children. But now you can maybe have technology that be able to give you scenario plans that are a little bit deeper into the future, that can be a little more accurate, that allows a financial advisor to help them maybe through that moment. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity. I think the industry is going to change quite a bit. It's no longer the trader. It's going to be more the human psychologist, I think, becomes the advisor.
Well, that's actually where I'm gonna pivot to. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna volunteer something I experienced, and I think, like, you're seeing, especially with any platform that has an AI note taker, some of them are starting to go down this path as well, and that's doing some, um, either behavioral finance light or just trying to synthesize some themes that maybe, were identified. And so, like, here's an example. So I've talked about this on other episodes. I have an AI employee, Woodhouse, right? Largely using, anthropic models under the hood. And one of the things that it started naturally doing that now I'm leaning into and like providing more instruction on is it started telling me like, oh, on this call, they asked these questions. That was a buying signal. Or on this was their fear. And like, here's how you should position your follow up, and I'll go draft it for you. And so it was very interesting that like it's moving away from this very sort of administrative, like, oh, here are the 3 follow ups that you needed. And it's getting a lot more into emotional concerns and like positioning and strategy and how do you want to handle this relationship? Is it more delicate? Do you want to slow walk this one? Is this a go quick, go hard, go fast? Like, let's see if you can get them to sign
James,
today. It's
let me
very
push you on that for a second. Like, if everyone has Woodhouse and everyone has that tool, won't everyone have the same level of emotional intelligence, even if it's somewhat synthetic? And won't everyone start to feel exactly the same? Like, I guess I'm trying to figure out how that
I mean,
squares with Joshua's idea of like people having an inner unique magnetism.
I would say hypothetically, sure, but I think historically we've seen tech should level the playing field in a lot of areas, but it's still about who learns to
Right.
use it effectively.
Right.
So, sure, friction's getting lower. Going back to something Joshua said earlier, it's also kind of like raising what's expected. It's creating more
Right.
noise.
Yes,
People are
there's a
still going to have to
baseline.
get
Yeah.
better at it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a valid pushback, but I think we'll probably see what we saw historically, which is like only a fraction will really use it effectively.
I mean,
Yeah.
think about the life cycle of ideas, right? I mean, sharp insight becomes popular language, and then it gets flattened in the sameness. And now everybody has it in a template. It's
That
just like,
raises the bar. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, some of the
Yeah.
things that I talked about before, like this is not the first time you've heard the word archetype. There's little quizzes online. You can go take a little archetype discovery and answer 5 questions, or you can just look at a list and pick your archetype. Right?
Mhm.
Like this is not something that's novel, but depth is novel. And so we flatten so much of this. What this allows is for people to revisit with depth. So for example, yeah, you can get information in front of you, but part of what, the reason I see Advisor 360 is although it's not built as a growth solution, it is when you realize, to the extent that you understand that time is my restraint as an advisor, all the time that I'm spending servicing my clients is keeping me from doing the activities that grow my business. Okay. So if I can remove all the friction of serving my clients and have faster insights, that allows me to spend more of my time developing myself and getting in front of other people. But then we get those insights. What do people do with them? Do we just say, okay, I'm going to do this? That bar will keep raising with that. The advantage will always be the human. It will always be what I call the pressure layer. Even if we get the signal right, and then we get the communication, the tactical strategy for how we get the message in front of them, if it doesn't survive the pressure layer, it's not authentic. It
Can you
doesn't
unpack
feel.
the pressure layer a bit? I'm
Yeah,
realizing it's a
absolutely.
pretty central concept.
Yeah. So what I mean by the pressure layer is, I'll illustrate it first. Marketing firm says, we're creating these leads for advisors, and they get into the meeting and they're not closing. Okay, well, let's think about that. What's happening here? Oftentimes, the message from the firm is completely detached from the advisor.
By the way, this is my teenage dating life right there.
So the message is detached, just like Mark was detached from the entire dating market.
Absolutely.
What was I saying?
You're saying the message is detached, just wasn't landing.
Oh my God.
No closing happening. I keep on asking my wife, like, what is my magnetism? I don't get it.
The pressure layer discussion, one of the things I wanted to ask about is, as you're seeing the wealth industry sort of transfer into, how do you find clients? So there's like different parallels. We're seeing most advisors, they might go up to 80 if they are in the RA market. If they're in the BD, they might get as much as 175 we're seeing, but we're seeing some type of range that we're not seeing it break. They seem to be quite happy within that range. Second piece, I agree with you, like time going back. Didn't know if there's some type of psychology about like, why not to 250? I sometimes even see like, oh, AI is going to break away to 1,000. I'm not sure you can keep 1,000 relationships at a good depth. But there's certainly interesting pieces of like how the industry actually works that we haven't really figured out yet. We're trying to figure out, take the administrative burden off, give more time back to the advisor, and see what the advisor can maybe do.
And what are they going to
Jason,
do with it?
before Joshua responds, I'm glad you brought that up, because like Mark and I have probably discussed Dunbar's number on like 4 different episodes already. And I was like, wait, we have a guest that is properly equipped to give us some insight as to, does tech enable us to start to break through that number like you're getting at?
Yeah. So the pressure layer is basically where a lot of people kind of flatten into authenticity is, am I having the emotional experience that I expected? Is this coming across? Does it feel the way that I expected? Does this confirm my expectation? Because we've built up a gut feeling. That's the whole point. If we're doing effective connection in our marketing, people are already building a relationship with you. And this is the problem with a lot of advisors. They say, well, I just need more leads. And then they get into a first meeting, and then they're getting into a pitch, and they only have a certain amount of time. I've got to make sure. So we're trying to get to the point where, okay, we want your clients to be building a relationship with you before they even get into this. So they're coming in with some familiarity and some expectations, but now we've got to make sure that the expectations that we've built, that they're being confirmed. Because normally when you get into these first meetings, if you don't have that relationship, all you're doing in that first meeting is opening loops. I want your meeting to be closing loops, not opening loops.
And is that the pressure? Is that the pressure point? Is the point at which you're meeting the expectation and closing the loop?
Yeah.
I see.
Exactly
Yeah,
right.
that makes a lot of sense. I do like the idea. I do want to come back to that Dunbar question. I mean, I like the idea of the advisor being freed up to actually, have honest human emotional sort of, holistic conversations with their clients, and that being like an avenue to basically build differentiation. But yeah, I mean, it gets back to this fundamental question: can AI break through the Dunbar barrier or not? So yeah, I was curious if you guys have a point of view there.
Jason?
It's the biggest question right now. And that's one of the questions we're having is we're investing, taking out the friction, and we have not selected to move into an application layer or starting to solve the lead gen issues that I think sort of plague a little bit of the industry. What we are starting to study is, can we break the Dunbar layer and then figure out, okay, well, if that is true, then maybe we should start to invest pretty heavily in the marketing component of the industry. So we don't actually have an answer yet. I think we're just in deep study of, can that actually happen? I think some theories we have is there's certain amount of probably mass affluent that you would be okay servicing. It's probably like more of self-driving with some type of check from an advisor, where it's the end of the market where you want, that sort of relates to you, that advisors would love to service. It would help potentially as they build their book, they would become I think more complex and have enough investable assets to be serviced at a higher degree, so you can start to service built-in growth within your book. So that's kind of a couple thoughts that we're saying maybe that opens up other areas that you wouldn't service as much, but we haven't really said explicitly that we can break the Dunbar.
Joshua, do you have a point of view on that?
Yeah, I think the gap between what the industry sells, to a certain extent, obviously, but who you're talking about, but we can serve hundreds of families, and like, can we keep doing this? I think that what ends up happening is the constraint is the brain, what the brain can actually do to create a trust deficit that most advisors don't even see, but prospects feel it. They feel it as, my advisor doesn't really know me. I'm just a number. But that's a biological inevitability. Here's what I would argue, though, is that when people know you and they relate to you, they feel like you know them because they feel like they already know you. So the reason that story works and personal story works, and you can make it work even better if you can apply it to why you're appropriate to be the guide for this person, and then these types of people solving these types of problems, right person, right problem, right time, is because with mass media, you have opportunities to get more opportunities for people to connect with you out there. This is one of the things that, I've been on the board at Finney since the very beginning. And one of the things I told them is, okay, guys, you're a fish finder. You can find where the fish are and you've got a hook. Okay. But you're limited by the bait, the quality of the bait on the hook. Who's the bait? You can't provide it. You don't provide bait. That is your problem. The problem you have to solve is not, can I find the fish? It's, how can I improve the bait? Especially when you've got advisors that think that all I need is, I'm so great. I'm smart. I've got everything. I just need more people in front of me. So if you can give people the opportunity to feel like they know you, it will give you a leg up into feeling like they know you. I mean, I'm saying that very theoretically, and I believe that opens up our opportunity for more clients to feel known, but it's still eventually going to be a capacity issue. And I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So people could feel like they know you and therefore maybe you know them, but then are you really servicing them the proper way? And that's the fundamental question. I guess with AI tools, can you do that? Is there some magic combination there between narrative, people knowing you, and AI tools that allows you to be more effective at servicing? Yeah, I think that's an open question. I mean, I think it does. You brought up Finney, and I guess I'm really interested in this like more fundamental question. Jason, it sounds like you were in a war room recently, like talking through marketing differentiation. I think I'm curious your thoughts on marketing differentiation 2 or 3 years from now, right? Like if the floor is rising, as you're saying, Joshua, and what people expect of their tools is also increasing, and people are going to just expect note-taking as a feature going forward, some level of CRM as a feature going forwards. There's always going to be, a base level of features expected of WealthTech tools. What is the differentiation going to be there of those WealthTech tools, between each other, between that and Anthropic's, latest venture in the space? I'm just curious, where do you see this playing out a little further out, 2 to 3 years from now?
Jason?
Such a good question. Well, I think there's about 7 layers in the industry, and I think it starts to collapse pretty rapidly. So when you think about the custodian or DTC lib data layer piece is where the records are actually happening. And then there's why we're focused where we are is at the advisor layer and the client advisor, and everything else in between. We think, and this has been for a little while, has been thought through, can be disrupted, but it hasn't really, as it's only been disrupted very slowly. So whether you're TAMP, asset management, which you're product manufacturer, insurance manufacturer, like those are pieces of how do you get distribution out. I think that because application software was expensive, adoption of that was expensive. There's a couple vehicles we're seeing now that you can to start interact with AI, so you don't have to worry about those bigger layers. And now you can, it's a chat interface or it's a voice recognition interface. And as long as you can get plugged into what the regulatory market wants, which is the custodian layer, as long as you can get plugged into the main product and insurance manufacturers, which they have every incentive to get to a better distribution model as well, then you start to say, well, why do I need like TAMPs and why do I need these other rebalancers and everything else? Because they're somewhat biased to where they usually sit on top of is the proposals that they have is inside of like what they offer and their product. And very few are completely open ecosystems. But the product manufacturer, they just want it to be open ecosystem. I think that the advisor and the client, weight of what used to be on the advisor to learn alts or to learn all these other complexities start to go away because AI can now feed it to you a little bit easier, a little bit quicker. It can get better at personalization and optimization across a much larger pool of different options. And so I think that's what's going to get pretty interesting. And you're going to start to see the collapse of those various layers. What I think is then you start to get advice in two different ways, whether you want to be self-directed or through the advisor mediated. Those shrinking margins that we've been seeing over a period of time, maybe it starts to flatten out a little bit on an overall margin basis. And then the advisor load that they used to carry for every relationship somewhat it gets a little simpler. They can still carry the 150 relationships, but they don't have to carry the level of detail that maybe they get to. Basically, the AI gets to automate itself better to be a little bit more personal because they can keep up with that relationship load is not necessarily in their brain. It can be augmented with some of the technology. So I think there's two trends. There's like, you're going to have a better ability to have a good relationship. I think the stack inside of wealth, I think collapses. And I think people get better personal advice.
But then how do WealthTechs differentiate between each other if that stack is collapsing?
Yeah, I think to me, it's probably going to be like very few winners. What I think you saw in the last 30 years was, and the proliferation of point solutions. When you now have an artificial intelligence that can pull together and learn those workflows or those various features very quickly, you're going to start to get into massive consolidation, I think, very quickly. So I think there's going to be few winners. That's sort of where my head is at.
Interesting. All right. Yeah. Joshua, what do you think? You're on mute, I think.
Sorry about that. I think marketing is, I probably say growth strategy. The edge has all been about distribution, more and better. Now it's even better prompts and things like that. I think it's moving more towards the architecture and distribution of your human signal. Things are going to be going from more of the broad persuasion, because that's what when we're creating marketing right now, it's marketing 101 that we've known for 50 years. Create urgency, that sort of thing. And so we're going to be moving from broad persuasion to more precise resonance. And so that means that the value moves towards stronger identity, better emotional precision, sharper category fit, not just can you produce marketing to can you produce resonance, recognition. And that's a very different skill. The firms that are going to win at this are not going to be the ones that are just visible, because, I never saw ads on Facebook for advisors 20 years ago. And by the way, I've been on Facebook over 20 years, so don't tell me that I was original 10 schools on Facebook. Been a long time. And now I see them all the time. And so everything has been about tactical differentiation. You could get an edge from a better website, a better funnel, a better automation, a better design, a better digital tactics. And the rate at which we have increased the quality and the access and reduce the cost of better tactics is astounding. But what we have not done is increase the quality of the human layer. But as the tech layer improves, those advantages that we just keep going, it's like a hamster wheel. As those advantages improve, they get compressed. So we're going to be moving into a battleground that's a lot more about trust formation, judgment, how the firm feels in, the human moments. Because ultimately, the individual, this is the last thing I'll say, individual growth is happening every day at the individual level. But the systems that produce human excellence, they're still lagging badly behind the systems that produce technical efficiencies. And the technical is just going to keep going up, and we're still going to be diverting to the human at a certain.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think what I'm hearing is, there's going to be sort of collapse in the stack and maybe less underlying technical differentiation, but there's going to be more of a need for human-based differentiation, and trust is going to be really important. And narrative and trust is probably going to be the thing. And maybe that does lead to consolidation because only a few are going to achieve that level of trust.
Yeah,
over time.
You're going to have to, a few years from now, you're going to have an Advisor360 type solution. Now, I'm not saying that the other little things are going to go away, because people always want to personalize. I use the example of Crocs shoes, the shoes that all the kids are into, right? They put little things on them and make it distinct. And that's the cool thing that struck me about Advisor360 is like, I get to have what I want, but then I can also put a little thing on here that's mine. You can still give it my personality and still give it my.
Wait, is Advisor360 the Crocs of wealth management?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure Jason's going to take that back to the marketing team and they're going to run with it.
Dude, we'll get some shoes out. It's good.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Free marketing for you guys.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a really good, like in the short term though, and let's say the next 2 to 5 years, there's the differentiation is going to come down to, I think, the technical, like how you're going to able to take advantage of this new technology. Yeah. And what we see is there's like 4 different paths that we see. One path is you're like a custodian and you're going to try to build up. And I think Altruist is doing a pretty good job, right? You're going to see some of the legacy players, they own their own homegrown tech stack, and they're going to they haven't been able to solve like the swivel chair or data problems and stuff, but they're trying to put AI on top of this tech stack that they built, over the last 20 years or so. And they don't own a lot of it. They basically have built slivers between other things that they bought to kind of build a unified experience to some degree. And then you have we call it the Kitch's chart. You basically can put together a bunch of software that they're calling AI native, or you kind of keep up with the innovation curve by you're selecting. But you're sort of, then the burden's on you to bring them together. The burden's on you to make sure you have a unified data model. And then the burden's on you to maybe figure out if the AI can go across these different applications or not, right? And then we think there's us, which is like this more independent, like operating system infrastructure piece that has applications on top of AI. And we spent a lot of money just we had a good, more of a very long-term view to take that approach, but you have to raise a lot of capital to take that approach. We'll see how it plays out. But I think those are like the 4 horses in the race at this point when you think about wealth tech or just fintech in general. I think Robinhood's also doing a really good job. Like they're essentially bringing together portions of the financial ecosystem through native applications, or they're buying certain things and they're putting it on. And through one holistic, really mobile first experience at this stage, right?
Well, I think we're kind of getting towards the end of our time here, so we'll pivot into some of our rapid fire stuff. So we do have a couple of questions that would kind of become a staple, but before I'll let Mark do those. But I was just going to ask for each of you, what's your most utilized or favorite AI tool? Doesn't have to be anything industry related whatsoever, just in personal use, professional use.
Mine is Claude, but it's because I'm joking with the teams around vibe coding websites or building financial models, or just in kind of enjoying that piece of it, where I always wanted maybe to be an engineer, but never really built the bullet to figure out how to code. And now you're able to, if you can articulate what you want through language, it can sort of get there. But you run into roadblocks. Like you're the only person that can code. You can't kind of like share that coding landscape at the moment. And then there's only so far you can go. There's only so many tokens or so much code line that you could really produce before it kind of breaks at this stage.
Are you using Claude Code, or are you doing it mostly through?
It's Claude. Yeah, it's Claude. And that's just more like, I don't what is people talking about? Why are all these people adopting it? Can it actually do what they're saying? And you got to kind of have a little rough fun and see what it actually can do.
And do you, just out of curiosity, like when you put something together, do you then like connect it to a GitHub or Vercel or DigitalOcean and try to publish it? Or
I have not yet. No, I have not done that. So like what early February was when kind of launched. So I've been more into it for the last couple of weeks, as I've watched as we're thinking about making a bigger investment, and some of our team is going to go all in on only Claude coding and see if they can't rapidly produce pieces of categories of the WealthTech. And so we've been all jumping in to see what are the constraints if we would actually do that.
What about you, Joshua? What are you using? What's your favorite tools right now?
So right now, I mean, I hate to say what Jason said, but I love Claude and Claude Code now. And I just, I love Whisper Flow at home. I hate it on my phone. It just never seems to like want to use it on my phone, work well on my phone. I mean, the amount of ideas that I can track and develop that way is fantastic. So I love that.
Can you explain that workflow a little bit for people, the Whisper Flow?
Whisper Flow is basically a talk to text app that you can have a quick shortcut on your keyboard. So if you want to talk through something, you can do that. And instead of having to type everything, so it allows you to move faster. Works with any app, and it's fantastic on the desktop, but on the phone app, my shortcut key, I can't tell if it's on or off. Sometimes that doesn't work. There's tension there. I end up not using as much there. But I've been getting into vibe coding myself. I have my personal assistant, Wilma Jean, named after
I love that classic Alabama name. I love it.
That is my late favorite aunt, Wilma Jean, AKA Aunt Tootsie.
Nice.
Sweetheart of a gal. Tribute to Aunt Tootsie. There was they may still have it, but in Bear Creek, Alabama, for decades, they had a Tootsie Townsend Day where they would celebrate her because she was such a wonderful person in the community that did so much for the children in this rural Alabama area. So proud of my Aunt Tootsie, and therefore my Wilma Jean.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, I think I did actually find this is like a new use of a note taker. I found I could like narrate out what I wanted to do into a note taker. In my case, I was just using Knapsack, and then it would translate it into a great Claude Code prompt for me to kick off the project, right? Because ultimately that whole like how to get started, and how to make sure you're putting it on the right path, especially if you don't want to burn through your Opus 3.6 tokens and burn a hole in your wallet. If you want to stick with Sonnet, you really need to be a little careful, right? And so I found that was
4.7 came out today. Open 4.
I know, and I don't even want to know how much those cost. Haven't even looked up how much that costs.
It's a lot more. I saw at lunch. I was pulling some stuff up, and I saw a guy show the chart. It's a good chunk.
Yeah,
it's significant.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I have been hearing about people switching over to other models or even local models, to try to take care of that issue. I'm hearing about more people using the GLM models, which are Chinese models, which are much cheaper, even for coding tasks. I just don't think local models are there yet for coding, but we'll see. We'll see. So here are staples. Most overhyped and underhyped, either tool or use case. What do you guys think? Let's start with you, Jason.
One of the things that we're trying to do is bring together like overall meeting preparation for advisors. And when you just use AI, anything deterministic is really difficult. So when you need a straight answer and you need a consistent answer. And so we've kind of had to work around it. So when people say like, look, AI is going to do everything for you, it struggles when you're talking about financial portfolio assessment of performance. And so what it can do is give you good design and graphical representation once it has the data, but for it to kind of go in and kind of just get that information and you sort of like have a conversation or prompt it, I think you get different answers, and that's not a comfortable feeling when you're dealing with money. And so that's what we see is like, I think a little bit overhyped at this point. There's techniques that we're working around, but I would say that's the major use case. That's a little bit overhyped.
And what about underhyped? What do you see out there that people aren't talking about enough?
I think there's certain sections, like in general, I think there's a lot of, when you run your business now, that I think that we're seeing, or even internally in our company, we're seeing like a slowness to adopt. And we want basically marketing to run, like a lot of finance to run, like a lot of the operations can actually just go pretty AI native at this point. Cause there's a lot of automation that can be driven by that. So we would love, particularly I'm working with marketing right now, to make a full shift and to be able to get our message out, be able to change content relatively quickly, be able to test, completely rip apart SEO, put it back together. Those are the things that I think are somewhat under adopted. I see throughout, depending on the firm. I think the best firms and the most traction that you're getting, particularly on the tech side, are fully adopting some of these new capabilities very quickly.
What do you think, Joshua?
I mean, that's probably what you expect me to say. Generic AI content tools are overhyped. The bottleneck in advisory growth is not enough captions. It's trust, it's positioning, it's clarity, it's it can help you with follow through, that sort of thing. And I think that the content is the answer has gotten flattened into any content is the answer. So just put content out there, and you see those jokes on LinkedIn ever so often of, here's the 1,000 posts that hit my LinkedIn today that were all the same post. I think that probably, and I still see those being hawked all the time. And anyway, underhyped, I'd say probably just workflow, any tools that reduce friction in any moment where trust is won or lost. And I think that these things, they're often boring. They're often boring. Sometimes they're behind the scenes. I love tools that don't require anything of advisors, because one of the biggest bottlenecks is getting advisors to adopt. And so if you don't have to get advisors to adopt, but you can get gains in your firm, and one of my advisory clients, Leah, if you know Max, one of the things that jumped off the page to me, is, hey, we don't need advisors to be involved in this. That's great. That we should be shouting that. No involvement.
Just runs in the background. Yeah, I love that. And where do advisors lose trust? What's like a great example of where people could be investing?
Automating anything, like think about if what is your absolute perfect client experience of all the advice you've been given, and if you could put your label on it, and you could automate that, how would you do that? Trust is lost when someone says they're going to follow up, when an email is not replied to fast enough. If it's like, hey, busy now, saw your email, even that sort of stuff, that matters, especially early on. So, and I think that the other stuff is, you've got a small window in the beginning where the smoother things go, that's going to be the impact the entire relationship. So anything you can do to reduce friction in the very beginning and make it as easy as possible, especially on the human end. Oftentimes it's like the interaction went well, then as soon as we get off of the phone, now the friction begins. Now the getting lost begins. So those things. And then in your back office, there's so much frustration when one of my programs I do with firms is a teams dynamics program where we actually do behavioral discovery on all of them, help them to work better together. And I call it, one of the frameworks I use is I call it front stage and backstage. Front stage people, how do they think? How do the backstage people, what are the frictions, and how do we reduce those? So part of it is understanding how workflows reduce the friction and improve the communication between front stage people and backstage people. It keeps it from being so far away. And so part of what I do is the communication strategies and the habits to make this happen. But when we can take technology and say, hey, we can aid this with technology, then we reduce the friction internally as well. So I think that sometimes we get so distracted by what the clients are feeling that we're also, hey, the bottleneck is often our people, and nobody wants to say it. We need to come in and say, hey, I don't care where we're at in this firm, there's too much friction.
Right.
That is our default. Our default is we have too much. That's our default attitude is we have too much friction. We want less friction at the end of this quarter. How are we going to do that? I'm incentivizing you to tell me where there's friction so we can solve it. Finding friction and eliminating friction is what I want to incentivize at this firm, not pretend like no friction exists.
Yeah. I mean, story
I may
of my
steal that
opinion
piece of
pretty much.
advice when I work with clients.
Absolutely. I'm also going to steal the new motto for our podcast: just get the content out there. I think that's good.
That's exactly what the takeaway should be.
Yeah, we're just all about commoditized content. We want to be as similar to other people as possible.
I mean, well, Mark and I were talking about having our, AI employees coming on the podcast, and so maybe they just replace us, and they just go on with guests, and then we'll be able to just pump out content. We'll do like 4 of these a day.
We'll do 50 episodes a day. It'll be fantastic.
Have Woodhouse reach out to Wilma Jean. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. They can just talk to each other. It's fantastic.
So funny.
Well, thanks, gentlemen. Really appreciate you coming on. And how can people learn more from each of you? Jason, go ahead.
Different conferences, and then some of the website information that we're going to be sort of launching. We're also hitting the ground pretty hard on going to advisor cities and sort of inviting people to some small groups, just because we want to show people like what the new world could look like with different types of technology, which is that fourth choice that I've been saying we're bringing to markets. That's how you get in touch with us and Advisor360. So thank you for the time, guys.
Yeah, of course. And Joshua?
Yeah, so search for Dr. Joshua Wilson on LinkedIn or YouTube, or go to Neubefi.com. You got to put the doctor in front of it. That was the reason I got the PhD, because no one ever found me in a search with the second most generic name in the world, Joshua Wilson, after like John Smith or something. So the doctor will actually help you find me now. I got to have it. Otherwise you'll never find me. So yeah, I've got the YouTube channels, got a lot of new content coming out next month. WealthTech Founders Lab, that's coming out as well. So we'll have 2 YouTube channels, both getting really fired up next month. Some content on mine already. LinkedIn, I'm very active on. But anyway, go to Neubefi.com, get on my newsletter, start a conversation.
Yeah. And the spelling there, just so you don't end up somewhere salacious, is Neubefi, just to be really
yes, clear. Neurobehavioral finance, Neubefi.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing what you build next.
Thanks, yeah. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.